This is Gridiron Graduates, a weekly podcast covering all things football. Episode number 52. Wait, sports happened this week? Recorded November 9th, 2016.
Hey, what's going on, everybody out there? Bill Reset, hit you guys back up on another edition of GG, the post-election edition. Hope everyone is somewhat recovered from all the happenings. Obviously not going to get too much into it, but certainly a very eventful night, and I'll just say congratulations to Mr. Donald Trump on becoming president. Just going to say I'm very stunned by that, and that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to make this a big political issue, but as always, my co-partner, more than my vice president, kind of considered my co-president more than the vice president, Mr. Ian Ward. What's going on, bud?
Not too much, man. Not too much. Just almost hitting that holiday season, which means that sports are definitely, it's a good time of year. Obviously, we talk a lot of NFL, college football here, but NBA also kind of kicking things off. It's a fun season for them. Baseball wrapped up. Obviously, the Cubs got that championship. Congrats to their fans. It was obviously a very exciting win for them, and happy for them. And so, it's a good time of year for that. Hockey fans, obviously, as well. Can't forget about you guys. I really like hockey too, but obviously, I will admit I'm not as into it as I wish I could. Obviously, it's hard to be a fan and analyst of two different sports and be able to keep track of all the different sports. It's actually pretty much impossible. So, but I got a lot of love for hockey as well. I love going to those games. So I'm doing really well, man. It's a great year, great end to the year here in terms of sports, and so I'm looking forward to finishing strong here and hopefully things continue to be pretty entertaining for us.
Absolutely. And I'll give a shout out to college basketball as well. That season starts Friday night, so I'm excited for that.
Oh, wow. I'm always taken aback by how quickly that season seems to start up. I don't know why. It just seems like it always sneaks up on me.
It really does. I think because, with college, football and all that kind of taking center stage, and with the NBA, it seems like it quietly approaches. But yeah, opening night in college basketball is Friday night. I know for one, North Carolina's at Tulane. I know Villanova's in action. I think Duke's in action. You even got a couple top 25 games earlier on Friday night. So, definitely a fun time. And with college hoops, of course, means the NCAA tournament and filling out brackets, and that's always a fun thing for me. So I'm looking forward to that. But so let's jump into it. We're actually going to go ahead. Ian brought up this idea before we went on the air, and I like it. Obviously, a lot of other people are doing it, so we might as well dip our toes in it as well. Hand out some mid-season awards here in the NFL, and maybe some college awards as well, even though we're obviously more than halfway done in that sense. But, man, it's hard to believe we're going into week 10 already of the NFL season. I mean, we're more than halfway done now. A lot of teams are either halfway or more than halfway done with their season. So, just crazy how it's been flying by. So, we'll go ahead and hand out some awards. Might as well start right at the top. Go with MVP. So what do you think, bud? Who'd you say right now is your mid-season MVP?
Yeah, so right now, it's this is really hard. I think you start with the obvious names. There's a strong argument, I think, for Tom Brady. What he has done, even with missing the first 4 games of the season, he's just on pace for banana numbers. And that team, honestly, if they wouldn't have lost with Jacoby Brissett, that team may have an undefeated season. That might have been, we might have had 0-16 and 16-0 in the same season. Because of that, 0-16 obviously with the Browns, but so he's got a really good argument. He's obviously always in that race. The argument against him obviously is that they went 3-1 with Jimmy Garoppolo, and so that's kind of difficult. Well, I should say 3-1 with the combination of Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett. So that's kind of I admit, I do think that takes away from Tom Brady a little bit. I think it's naive to say that it doesn't. Now, obviously, they're not Tom Brady, but the argument would be that they could win similar amount of games probably with Jimmy Garoppolo type. So, and I think that there's something to that, but, he's still been stellar, and you can't take that away from him. Another guy I would also consider Ezekiel Elliott. I actually think that he would be a fantastic MVP choice. You look at what the Dallas Cowboys are doing, the best NFC team there is right now. And why is that? Well, yeah, great offensive line. They've been fantastic. Given Dak Prescott a heck of a start to his rookie campaign as well. But Ezekiel Elliott is a special talent, and he'd be doing great things even with a worse offensive line. Not with a horrible one, because running backs do need a good offensive line to produce, but what he's accomplished so far. I mean, this guy has 177 carries, 891 yards, a 5.0 carry, yards per carry average, 7 touchdowns already. You look at his receiving numbers. He doesn't have a ton of receiving numbers. He's got about 100 and change on the year, so he doesn't have a ton as far as that, but about 155 officially. So still very impressive. I think he's been fantastic. And to me, those two are the ones that stand out the most right now, because generally speaking, too, it's going to go to usually like the best player on the best team. Best playmaker, I should say, offensive playmaker on the best team. So we have to keep that in mind, too, and just kind of keep that realistic. A couple years back, J.J. Watt had a good argument, but obviously he didn't win it. So, keeping it within the realm of realism, I think those two, head my list. I think Matt Ryan also deserves a lot of consideration. He's been great this year. He's been great. And this is a guy I've been very critical of the last 18 months to 2 years. I thought even before he started to show some physical wear and regression, I thought he was kind of peaked and topped out. This is a guy that he has historically needed an elite surrounding cast to play good. When his surrounding cast dipped, he played really poorly. But it wasn't just that, too. Physically, he didn't look the same. Matt Ryan, it looked like at times he was suffering from a little bit of dead arm, where he just couldn't physically get the ball past 15 yards, 10 to 15 yards. And some people put it on Kyle Shanahan, some people put it on the system or the weapons. Honestly, I just think he played poorly. And I don't know why, but physically he didn't look the same. Maybe he was hurt. Maybe it was mental. I have no clue, but all I know is that the Matt Ryan we're seeing this year is a different Matt Ryan. This is who he was in large part when he had Roddy White and Julio Jones and Tony Gonzalez and Steven Jackson. He had a lot of weapons, and now the weapons around him are very good, again, starting with that offensive line and Kyle Shanahan, who I think I've been singing his praises for years. He's a phenomenal offensive coordinator. The system hasn't changed. It's just Matt Ryan's playing better, and they have Alex Mack at center. And so, considering that, I still do think, though, Matt Ryan has been fantastic, and I think he deserves a lot of MVP hype as well. But I'm going to give it to Brady right now at this point in the season, but I would probably say Matt Ryan is my number 2. If he can continue this pace, he definitely has a good argument for maybe even number 1.
Yeah, I was even going to bring up Julio Jones. So I like that you brought up Matt Ryan. Absolutely. For sure, at least, I think you would consider him comeback player of the year at least, or in the running for that.
Yeah.
He's already almost at 3,000 yards. He's got about 300 yards more than Drew Brees at this point, who's number 2. Certainly, Brees. Some people are obviously going to make a case for him, even though the Saints, they're 4-4, but But yeah, Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, I think those two definitely have to be considered as well. Obviously, the two of the biggest reasons why this team has completely turned around from where they were the last couple of years, sitting atop the South. But I think I'm going to agree with you. Just the way Tom Brady has been playing ever since he came off that 4-game suspension, helping get the Patriots to 7-1. I mean, yeah, you're right. The knock is that they did win 3 games with Jimmy Garoppolo, but it just seems like they're just that much better, or they've been that much better ever since Tom Brady came back. So I'm going to have to agree with you. I think Brady probably the favorite because, like you said, it tends to go to the best player and typically a quarterback on one of the best teams. And right now, Tom Brady on a 7-1 team, it makes me wonder though how much love are the voters maybe going to give to Dak Prescott at this point too? How well he's been playing too, and again, the fact that he's a quarterback on a 7-1 team. You mentioned Zeke Elliott, so I think it'd be a long shot right now. He's a bit of a dark horse, but you got to show Dak a little bit of love too for how he's played and kind of holding that team together in the absence of Tony Romo.
Yeah, definitely, and he's done a great job. And I do think, though, and I mentioned this a couple weeks ago when we talked about it, I do think Tony Romo should get the reins back to his team when he's fully healthy, if he even is fully healthy this year. Dak's been great, but I do think that he's a little bit more of a product of the system around him. Not trying to take anything away from his performance, he's been very good, but Elliott to me is the star of that team. And to me, he is the backbone of it, along with the offensive line. And it makes a young quarterback's job, any quarterback, but especially a young quarterback's job, so much easier when he can, hand it off to a top 3 running back in the NFL.
Absolutely.
And so, just kind of considering that, they may cannibalize themselves too as far as the MVP and Offensive Rookie of the Year for the NFC. So that's going to be a really fascinating thing to watch. Just how well those two can continue playing, but also when it comes down to voting for individual awards, do they kind of hurt each other in the sense that, who are you going to vote for? Because, again, the quarterback position gets so much more press. It's definitely a position that gets talked about more. And so, that's going to come into play eventually.
Excuse me. And I kind of teased, might as well talk comeback player of the year because I kind of brought that up with Matt Ryan as well. I mean, again, from where he was the last couple of years to where he is now, I think he's got a real good shot to be comeback player of the year. Any thoughts on that?
That's an award that is a little bit different because there's so many ways to kind of define what is a comeback player of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you could say Melvin Gordon is a comeback player of the year candidate.
Yeah,
this is
absolutely.
He's run for 768 yards so far this year, playing much harder. I think running much better in terms of not necessarily even just seeing the field, just being determined and playing hard. Like, it sounds weird and very simplistic, but that's the truth. He's just running harder through the hole a lot. You could say DeMarco Murray. DeMarco Murray was a disaster in Philly last year. This year, he's been fantastic with the Titans. Andrew Luck, he was hurt most of last year, so he's a little bit more of the traditional comeback player of the year candidate because he's what you think. Dealt with injuries, comes back. He's playing some decent ball this year. I've seen some people say he's playing the best ball of his career. I wouldn't agree with that. I would say a couple years ago was his best ball. He's a little bit more in the mold of like Matt Stafford, who Matt Stafford is nowadays. Kind of became less I guess he's more risk averse, I guess. Taking more of the check downs, relying more on his running backs and then the running game, which is good. That's smart football. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's also less dynamic. And I think it's easier to find quarterbacks who can do that on a weekly basis. But nonetheless, he's still, I think, a very strong candidate. And then Jimmy Graham. And I think Jimmy Graham would be my winner. This is a guy that's dealt with injuries the last couple of years.
That's a good call.
Yeah, like he has been outright dominant at times this year. He has been the number one receiver for the Seahawks on more than one occasion. And that's who we were accustomed to seeing in New Orleans. Obviously, the trade for him has been a disaster up until this year, but now they've got arguably the second best tight end in the NFL. And that's no shade on anyone else. But when Jimmy Graham is playing well, Jimmy Graham is dominant. And that's what he's been. And obviously, Monday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills, we had just a fantastic one-handed touchdown catch in the back of the end zone. So, I mean, that's definitely fresh on our minds, too. But you can make a great argument for a lot of guys here, but I'm going to go with Jimmy Graham, who's one of my personal favorites in the NFL.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a real good call from, how little he was used and just how out of sync he seemed to be with the offense last year. He's really turned it back on and has really recovered well from that injury. And, of course, I have him in the 480, so how could I forget Jimmy Graham? And I'm doing well in the 480 as well. The Scott Fish Bowl sitting at 6-3 right now.
Very nice.
So hoping to hang in there and get to the playoffs. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's all you can really do in fantasy leagues. Is once you get to the playoffs, then some crazy stuff happens, and hopefully you drafted a team that's going to have competitive games late in the year, and some of that is luck, and some of that, it's hard because when you're drafting a team, I always struggled with this was, do I take the guys who are going to put up great numbers the first couple months, but might be on a losing team, so maybe they're not going to get the ball as much, maybe their production won't be as consistent, through the end of the year? Or do you take guys that, are going to be playing meaningful games, but they might not have as consistent of outputs throughout the season? So, it's really hard, man. Like, that's why fantasy football, along with the injuries and stuff, is such a hard thing. But, hopefully your guys are healthy and going to be in the thick of a playoff race so that they can actually get, full playing time opportunities.
Man, here's hoping.
It's just a lot of luck, really.
It is. So I'm going to let you go ahead and pick an award and who you give it to, and we'll go from there. See if you have anything else you want to come up with.
Yeah, so I think the other obvious one to look at, we can do this by conference, NFC Offensive Player of the Year. I kind of mentioned this earlier. I think this is between Dak and Ezekiel Elliott. Dak with cumulative numbers, 66% completion percentage, 2,000 yards, passing 12 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, an additional rushing 125 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns. Obviously very good numbers. And then I would throw in another Ohio State guy on the NFC side of things. Wide receiver, clearly the top wide receiver from the draft, Michael Thomas. A guy who I really liked. I have obviously a ton of exposures to him. Fantastic route runner. He's arguably maybe the most talented wide receiver Drew Brees has ever played with. And I feel pretty comfortable saying that. And then I loved Marcus Colston, but he was not as physically gifted as Michael Thomas is. He's dominating every week. He really didn't even play that much until week 6. I mean, he had 7 catches in week 3 for 71 yards, but he's really taken off here in the last couple of weeks. Cumulatively, he's at 47 receptions, 573 yards, 5 touchdowns. He's caught 75% of the passes thrown to him so far. So this is a guy. He has played fantastic football so far. He's been a mismatch both on the outside and in the slot. So I mean, I wouldn't give him the award, but I'll tell you what, he's certainly deserving of the award. NFC Defensive Rookie of the Year, that's going to be a little bit more difficult. We've seen a lot of the rookies, I think, on the AFC side kind of stand out a little bit more. By the way, the AFC Defensive Rookie of the Year is clearly going to be Joey Bosa. He has by far been the most dominant player in the draft. So, or at least defensively, already with 4 sacks in just a handful of games. But, as far as the NFC, I mean, you can make a strong argument for guys like, for some reason I was thinking of Landon Collins, and clearly that's not him. Vernon Hargreaves, I think he's played fairly well as a rookie. But I think he had a tough week last week. I know, like, when I went back and I charted his week 9 performance, he ended up allowing 8 receptions on 11 targets. And look, some of that's going to happen, like, especially from cornerbacks. That's going to happen when you face great competition. And he was facing Julio Jones and that Matt Ryan offense, like we talked about. Leonard Floyd has played fairly well for the Bears. And I don't have a full picture here in front of me, so I'm just kind of skimming through guys. Keanu Neal, I think, from Atlanta, I think he would have a very good argument as well. I think he's kind of outperformed what people had expected from him as well. So I'm going to give this one to Keanu Neal. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he's been a big impact in that secondary for the Falcons, and they've got a talented back 7, but they still need to do some work as far as even with the linebackers, but definitely along the defensive line they need some work and improvement. But their secondary has been pretty solid, in large part to Neal and then their great cornerbacks. So I'm going to go with Keanu Neal for that one. And then Offensive Rookie of the Year, I'll say Zeke. AFC Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, I should say, Joey Bosa. AFC Offensive Rookie of the Year. I would probably lean towards Will Fuller at this point, or Jack Conklin, a guy who I was critical of coming out, but I did think he was a better right tackle / guard prospect than he was at left tackle, and so far he's played very well, especially considering expectations for him were not quite as high.
Good calls all around. I think Zeke's a pretty safe bet for NFC Offensive Rookie of the Year. I like the Keanu Neal pick for NFC Defensive Rookie. He's definitely made his name known early on in that Falcons secondary, so that's a solid pick. Hargreaves, like you said, has played well. Sheldon Rankins had that injury, so hopefully he's able to bounce back, because I'm curious to see what he can do. I like those calls for sure on the rookies. I guess one more. I guess we might as well throw out Coach of the Year for the hell of it. Coach of the Year is always interesting. Is it maybe the best team or the most improved? Kind of like comeback player of the year. There's a couple different ways you can look at it. Is it a coach that rides his team high? Is it, a high win differential, something like that? Like early on, Mike Zimmer was certainly in the running, but of course the wind has kind of come out of the sails a bit for the Vikings, so kind of knocks Zimmer a bit down. You're probably going to put Jason Garrett in the running there, just with the Cowboys being at 7-1 with a rookie quarterback and a rookie running back. Even some of the rookies. Bob McAdoo has the Giants in pretty good position. Doug Peterson was doing well early on for the Eagles, but he's had some mishaps. So, a couple ways you can go about it. I'm curious your thoughts on some of the options here.
Yeah, it is, and like you said, it's hard because usually they'll just give it to the coach with either the most wins or the one who outperformed expectations the most. And that's fair, by the way. I think it is fair to give to like the coach who outperformed expectations. I do think Jason Garrett is a really good choice. I think Doug Peterson's a great choice as well. What he's accomplished with a talent, it's a good Philadelphia team, especially their defense. Their offense is just really young. Obviously, you know this, and what he's done with Carson Wentz has, even though Wentz has really struggled the last couple weeks, and we talked about this early in the season, it was going to happen. It's just a matter of when. Defenses make adjustments. Rookies struggle. It's what's expected. As impressive as he was early in the season, as much as he struggled lately, it's still been a very positive run here from Peterson, and he's still doing, I think, a great job overall. So I think he should absolutely deserve some votes and some looks. I would also look at, like you said, I think that really maybe the most underrated candidate that you would have, well, I shouldn't say underrated, maybe the one candidate that maybe you expected that we haven't seen, because of their team actually falling short of expectations, is actually Bruce Arians. I think at the beginning of the year, we would have all have expected Bruce Arians to be in that discussion, but they've kind of fallen off. On the other side, Pete Carroll, I think Pete Carroll probably deserves some looks at that as well. I think that we all know Seattle's limitations, but they are once again one of the top, if not the top defense in the NFL. And offensively, when Russell Wilson's been healthy, and he hasn't been healthy for half of the year, this is a team that's still been very dangerous, and they've been pulling out some big wins lately. If they can get on a roll here in the second half of the year, you may start to see some buzz growing for Pete Carroll as well. But here I'm going to lean with Garrett, just because, I mean, he's winning with really a marginal defense overall. It's not a great defense, and if you're going to question this team, especially on the in the playoffs, that's going to be what side of the ball you're looking at.
Let's change gears a little bit and go to the college side. We'll get to the playoff ranks in a little bit, but I guess we'll show some quick love to awards-wise. In college, would you say Lamar Jackson right now is your Heisman favorite?
Yeah, and to me, it's not even a discussion. Like, we're going to have a discussion, because that's what we do. But I mean, as far as, like, what voters should be discussing right now, I mean, who's even close? Like, how can you even argue against Lamar Jackson? He's been dominant, absolutely dominant. In 9 games, he has 170 completions, 288 attempts, which is 59% completion percentage. You'd like to see that be a little bit higher, but this is also a vertical passing game that's going to take their chances downfield often, and so that's part of the reason why his average is a little bit lower than what you'd probably expect out of college. And he is a little bit inaccurate as well. Don't get me wrong, he does have his issues there, but he's still been dominant throughout the year. 2,753 passing yards, a 10.4 average yards per attempt. That's absolutely insane. 26 passing touchdowns, 6 interceptions, quarterback rating of 165, which in college that's a little bit different than the NFL. But here's where you're really starting to get staggering numbers. Rushing. He has the same amount of rushing attempts in 9 games as he did in 12 games last year, 163. He has over 200 more rushing yards total this year. He has 1,183 rushing yards. He has a 7.3 yards per carry average. 19 rushing touchdowns this year. Not in his career. This year. This is Michael Vick 2.0. In fact, I think he's probably better than what Michael Vick was as a collegian. Like, that is absolutely bananas for someone of his position to have the skill set that he has. And even more fun, if you want to look at the leading rushers throughout college football. I'm trying to see here, bringing it up. Yeah, so the leading rushing yards, if it's going to come up for me, apologies for this. Okay, so while I'm bringing that up, I'll just say so other guys that I would have in consideration just because for the sake of the discussion, I would have Donnell Pumphrey, running back from San Diego State. He's diminutive. He's 5'9", 180 pounds, but he leads the country in rushing right now. Has 1,581 rushing yards. He's on pace to break his own personal record of 1,867 rushing yards he had 2 years ago. He's definitely an NFL prospect as well. You definitely have to take him as a serious threat to win the rushing title in college football. He is a fantastic player. He's small, but it does not matter. I'll tell you that right now. It does not matter. But yeah, so anyway, so Jackson's in the top 5 of rushing as well, as I finally got a chance to look at it. So he is just a dynamic playmaker, absolutely legitimate NFL prospect next year at quarterback, arguably quarterback 1, and maybe even the best player, best prospect entering next year. Just because you can't find a dynamic playmaker at the position like that, it's extremely rare. But he's, as far as a Heisman college player, I mean, he's almost impossible to stop. Clearly, he's not, impossible to stop because people have done it. But it is very, very difficult to stop him. And then I would also have Patrick Mahomes in the discussion as well, Texas Tech quarterback. It's not his fault that defense is so bad. It's one of those things where he has to score sometimes 60 to 80 points a game just for his team to win. It's absolutely insane. He's done a fantastic job despite far from ideal situation. He is the most physically gifted quarterback in college football. He's arguably the most physically gifted quarterback we've seen in college football since Matt Stafford as a passer, and that's some really high praise. This year he has a 66.8 completion percentage, which is a full 10 points higher than he was 2 years ago as a freshman. 3,886 yards. Again, that's only through 9 games. Let's see here, 31 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. So it's just bananas. This is a guy, he can also run too. He has 260 rushing yards and says 10 rushing touchdowns. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Mind you, he's also 6'3", 230 pounds. So he's another great athlete playing a position. Can move around. He extends plays extremely well. Quite frankly, I've never seen a player that size play like that. Generally speaking, you would see a guy more like Johnny Manziel size, which is like 5'10", 5'11", 200 pounds, playing like that, than you would Patrick Mahomes, which has a legitimate NFL body and a legitimate NFL skill set as well. I think what he's had to deal with at Texas Tech has been very difficult, and I certainly would put him in the discussion. Really the guy I left out would be Jabril Peppers. Fantastic player. Fantastic defensive player. Heisman contender? I don't think so. I'm sorry, I don't think so. I know that he gets comped to Charles Woodson because of the school affiliation at Michigan, but the reality is that he has not forced any turnovers. And that's just this year. That's in his career. 0 career forced turnovers. I don't understand how that happens. And again, this is going to sound very harsh and critical, but if you're a Heisman contender as a defensive player, you need to be on Charles Woodson's level. Charles Woodson has 16 career interceptions. Okay? That's just interceptions. Jabril Peppers has 0. That's an issue. And that's going to come back to haunt him come draft time, too. So folks saying that they're going to take him top 5, good luck. It's a lot like Miles Jack last year. Miles Jack did not make turnover-worthy plays We're seeing that already from Jabril Peppers. And so now he is a fantastic force. I'm a big fan of him, so I do think he's a first-round prospect. But I would like to see some improvement from him there. He's been a decent weapon on offense. He's a great kick returner. I actually think being a punt returner is his number one really big selling point, I guess, for the Heisman. But it's just not enough. It's not enough when Lamar Jackson's playing. And then I haven't even talked about guys like Deshaun Watson. Like, he's another guy that's going to be in the mix. Curtis Samuel from Ohio State, another guy in the mix. So there's a ton of talent this year all around. But to me, it's Lamar Jackson's, and I don't even think that anyone else should get a first place vote.
Yeah, I'm with you there. He's kind of far and away the favorite right now for sure. But I like the Mahomes mention as well. He's definitely one of the reasons that, obviously, the reason that Texas Tech is able to stay afloat. And like you said, definitely going to be a solid draft prospect for sure. So looking forward to checking him out. So let's go ahead and talk about the new playoff ranks that came out this week. I'd just like to shout out, number one, that Penn State is now in the top 10. Thank you, Nebraska and Florida, for dropping down the ladder and allowing Penn State to move up, giving them a better chance of the New Year's Six game.
Hey, helping out Ohio State too with the quality loss.
Yeah, absolutely. The loss now doesn't look as bad for Ohio State. And speaking of Ohio State, they've moved up to number 5 after absolutely spanking Nebraska last week. And they're right behind Washington, who moved up to number 4 after Texas A&M went ahead and ended the controversy themselves by losing to Mississippi State. So the top 4 are now, as expected, the 4 undefeated Power 5 teams in Alabama, Clemson, Michigan, and Washington. Then you got Ohio State at 5, Louisville at 6, Wisconsin 7, Texas A&M 8, Auburn 9, and Penn State rounds out the top 10. And I think one of the things that stands out too is how many 2-loss teams there are in the mix and how high some of these teams are. Wisconsin at number 7 is the highest ranked 2-loss team. Now, it's probably going to take a lot of chaos for some of these teams to get in. Like Wisconsin, like an A&M, but it's still something to see. Maybe it's just a little bit of parity in college football, but and then for the hell of it, the highest 3-loss team is Florida State at number 18, and then the Group of 5 race, still a tight battle between Western Michigan at 21 and Boise State at 22. So, your thoughts on this week's top 25?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. For one, I'm glad that I'm shocked. I'm glad that Ohio State is at number 5. I think that's totally fair. I think Wisconsin is worthy of that number 4 spot. Ohio State can't really gripe. If you have a gripe, then you should have won. You should have beat Penn State. They had the chance to, and they should have. Since they did not, then you know what? The undefeated teams need to stay ahead of them. I think that's totally fair. And ultimately, what it will come down to is Ohio State versus Michigan. And if every team wins out, the winner of that game will likely, very, very likely, get into that college football Final Four. So obviously they'd have to win the conference as well, probably against Wisconsin. That'll likely be the matchup. Not 100% set in stone yet, but that does seem like the favorite right now. So with that in consideration, that's what you have to do. Just win and you're in. So it was a little bit it was very surprising, I should say, to see Texas A&M lose. But they did also lose Trevor Knight, very likely for the season. That's tough going from a senior quarterback, even if it was his first year there, to a backup. And simply put, they just had a stinker. They had a letdown game facing Mississippi State, and that's what happens. That's what happens this time of year. You don't expect it, and then all of a sudden, boom, the picture changes in an early afternoon game. So, all eyes, I think, at this point are going to be on Washington. Can this team prove that they are a powerhouse team? They've got a couple of tough matchups coming up, specifically against Washington State. I believe that game is actually going to be, I think game day is going there either this week or next week. Trying to bring it up. But, so that's going to be a huge game for them. Actually, it'll be next week. It looks like this week they have USC.
USC this week, which
Yeah,
has become a tougher game because USC's also ranked, so...
Yeah, USC's playing better. They're not the same team as they were at the beginning of the year. They are a better team. They're getting more experience. Their young guys are playing better. So that will not be an easy game. But yeah, ultimately though, those are the guys that I'm looking at, obviously. But yeah, you're right though. If a team like Auburn runs the table, which would include beating Alabama, and you see one of these other top 3 or 4 teams lose, and then all of a sudden you've got maybe a 1-loss Washington and a 1-loss Ohio State and a 1-loss Michigan and a 1-loss Clemson and a 1-loss Alabama. Could Auburn jump one of those teams into the 4? I think it's possible. It's all about being hot at the right time. And, teams like that, if you've got the resume, you just need a little bit of luck. And so I think that we're looking at possibly a very, very exciting end to this season, depending on the chaos level. And, the chaos level to this point in the year has been pretty high.
Yeah, and, obviously we're seeing with these rankings, the committee just continues to stress that conference championships are a big factor. We've had the playoffs 2 years now, and it's obviously been all the, 4 of the Power 5 conference champions have made up the top 4. And I think it's pretty safe to say at this point that the Big 12 champion will not be in the playoff. I mean, the highest ranked Big 12 team is still Oklahoma at 11, and they've already got 2 losses, and one of them was to a Houston team that has fallen completely off the map. Sorry, Ian.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is what it is, and the other one's to an Ohio State team that will almost in no way, shape, or form be ranked lower than them at any given time.
Yep.
I mean, unless if they were to lose against Maryland, even if they lose against Michigan State, they'll be higher. But if they lost to Maryland, then maybe they would drop below Oklahoma, but they probably still shouldn't be. So, barring that, and I think Ohio State's going to destroy them, just based off what we saw with Nebraska, who's a very good team, just obviously get demolished by 59. But, I think you're right here. I think the Big 12 is in big trouble. Baylor's falling apart. I would guess Baylor's going to lose again this week. And everyone else is up and down and completely inconsistent. I think the only thing that you could take away from the Big 12 is that maybe Charlie Strong has saved his job. Beat Baylor, beat Texas Tech. I mean, I don't know what else that fan base wants from this guy with that young of a roster, but I think he's earned a chance to come back next year, and I hope he does. I think it'd be a shame if they let him go after only a couple of years, but yeah, man, the Big 12 is a mess right now, and they've got, I would say, very, very, very little shot of getting in. I just don't know how they're going to beat Auburn out. I would take Auburn over them. I would take a couple other teams as well. I would take Wisconsin. Wisconsin will probably be handed another loss. I would take even Penn State over them, though. So it's, if you're looking at 2-loss teams, I don't know how the argument goes in favor of Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, that head-to-head loss to Ohio State is obviously going to loom large. I mean, you look at their schedule right now. I mean, what's their marquee win? At TCU,
right?
At Texas Tech.
Their marquee games are losing to better teams. They had to win one of that Houston or Ohio State game.
Yep.
They had to win one of them. So
I mean, you only have right now 3 teams from the Big 12 in the top 25, in Oklahoma at 11, Oklahoma State at 13, and West Virginia at 16. And pretty amazing that West Virginia has the fewest number of losses, and they're the lowest ranked. But you look at their schedule, which I'm bringing up now, I don't think they really have a marquee win either, do they? I mean, their non-conference schedule was, pretty blah. Missouri's okay. It's an SEC school, but Missouri still kind of stinks. Obviously, Youngstown State is nothing. BYU is all right, but again, it's like, what's your marquee win? TCU at home at Texas Tech. And they have a head-to-head loss at Oklahoma State, so I guess there's your reason they're below them. So yeah, at this point, it's really going to be hard to look at some of these teams in the Big 12, and like you said, would you take them over even at Texas A&M or Wisconsin or like you said, Auburn? So
yeah,
I think
it's a discussion that is gonna. It would be tough if it came down to it. Obviously, I mean, the name recognition is going to help them, and the fact that they were ranked highly at the beginning of the season, and they're a good team. They're a very good team. They lost to 2 very good teams as well, but I just think it's going to be tough for them with the momentum that they lost early this season. It's going to be hard. It's hard to argue that they're deserving of another chance to play the types of teams that they already lost to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's probably looking at looking like the Sugar Bowl for the Big 12 champion. So I haven't gotten a chance. Let's kind of run through live right now as I do this what the Bulls might look like right now, based on the current rankings. Kind of a mini selection, mock selection here, so to speak. So I'm just kind of punching in the teams right now, and then we're gonna go from there. Don't think really I'll have to go too far, I don't think. But so obviously, right now Alabama would be the top seed against Washington. That would be the Peach Bowl, because the Peach Bowl is obviously closer to Alabama than the Fiesta Bowl is. And then you'd pair Clemson against Michigan. And then obviously Western Michigan would be in out of the group of 5, and Oklahoma from the Big 12. So we'd plop Western Michigan into the Cotton Bowl, because that's really the only bowl that Western Michigan will be able to play in among the 4 non-playoff bowls. And then we'll put Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl as the Big 12 champion. Rose Bowl then would take the next Big 10 and Pac-12 teams, since those champions will be in the playoffs. So Buckeyes still have a shot at the Rose Bowl, and the next Pac-12 team, I guess, would be Colorado. So that would be an interesting matchup. Ohio State, Colorado. Then the next SEC team, we'll give it to Texas A&M in the Sugar. So that would send Louisville to the Orange as the replacement for Clemson. And I guess it would be a matter of, do we pair them with Wisconsin, or do we pair them with Auburn, since they have choice between Big Ten and SEC there. I mean, at this point, it looks like one of them would go to the Orange, the other would go to the Cotton. So maybe they would look at that and try to figure out matchups. So I mean, for the hell of it, let's pair Louisville against Wisconsin and Western Michigan against Auburn. And those would be the projected bowl matchups right now based on the current rankings.
Wow, that would be interesting. I think Western Michigan is pretty legit. Like, they actually have several legitimate NFL prospects. Corey Davis obviously is the headliner, but they have a couple offensive tackles that'll be in the NFL as well. specifically their right tackle. So that, I mean, obviously Auburn's going to have more athleticism, just simply better recruits, but I think that'd be a heck of a matchup if we were able to see that.
So I guess that would mean too that Penn State right now would be the first team out of the New Year's Six. So if Penn State could just jump a little bit further, they might actually sneak in there. So
yeah, people will lose.
Yeah, if Penn State handles business, they very well could find themselves maybe playing in the Cotton Bowl. Maybe you'll see Penn State against Western Michigan. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
But yeah, so for now, that's what the bowls would potentially look like. You know, and obviously this year it's pretty easy because 3 of the 4 non-playoff bowls are the contract bowls, in the orange, the sugar, and the rose. So 5 of those spots are easy to figure out. It's just a matter of filling in the remaining 3. So obviously not much work needs to be done there. So, but still should be very interesting. You know, we've really only got a couple weeks left in the season. You know, and obviously teams are jockeying for position. So, you know, definitely looking forward to what'll happen. Obviously, you got some pretty good games this week. You know, and Western Michigan's already won, so they're likely going to keep their spot atop the group of 5.
Right.
Just kind of scrolling through. We talked about the Big 12. West Virginia's at Texas. Oklahoma's got Baylor. Some other games. You know, Auburn at Georgia. Louisville's got Wake Forest. A&M's got Ole Miss. We talked about Wisconsin. You know, so some interesting matchups. Nothing like major breakthrough or anything, if you want to look at it that way. But you know, obviously, a lot of these matchups have some potential for sure. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this is why we love college football. Unfortunately, I will be out all day Saturday, so I won't get to watch any of the games. It does look like a decent slate, though, and you know, again, try to take advantage as much as we can here. We only have a month left of college football before we hit the bowl season, and then obviously that's a great time of year as well. But we have a month left. NFL, we only have 2 months left, and then we hit the playoffs. So, you know, if your team sucks, I'm sorry, but enjoy the other games. If your team is in the thick of things, stay positive. Your team will probably not be good, and they'll let you down. But if you stay positive and, you know, drawing that negativity, then you may enjoy the games a little bit more. So just remember, we hate all of your teams, especially your favorite players, equally. But no, and you know, we are hoping that you guys can enjoy the rest of the season. Hopefully, we will continue to enjoy the rest of our season as both of our teams are kind of stuck in mediocrity right now.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll see what happens. So I think with that, we'll wrap it up there. Another solid pod in the books, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, this is the crunch time. You know, this is where we got to be clutch. We got to step up our game because teams are stepping up their games for the playoff push, and so we've got to answer the call as well and do our part to help give some analysis to these folks. So if you guys have questions, if you guys have any topics that you want us to cover during the week, make sure you guys send us that stuff via Twitter, Facebook, however you're friends with us. Let us know. Give us feedback. Leave us positive reviews on iTunes. That stuff matters. So, thank you again for listening.
Absolutely. You know, I always appreciate the listens and whatnot, and it's always fun. It's always fun doing this. So until next time, again, thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed. Enjoy the games this weekend. And we'll catch you next time right here on GG. Take care, everybody.